Natalie, on other really weighty questions of the day, how often do you floss your teeth?
I actually don't. I don't floss.
What are you talking about?
I know. I feel like this is something I feel some shame about disclosing publicly. I don't. I mean, I brush really thoroughly. I've got a good brushing technique. I don't really do floss.
If you go to the dental hygienist, is that not the first thing they make you do?
No, I get top marks from the dental hygienist.
Oh, well,
I think, to be honest,
your conscience is clear.
If I'm honest, I think it's because I had braces when I was a teenager, and I still have a little bit of the retainer in, so I've actually got some wire on the back of my bottom teeth. Which means you can't floss. So I think partly that is the grim and probably TMI reason why I don't. But since you ask, I had my reasons.
I am in no position to decry anybody for this because my relationship with dentists is poor. I was the son of 2 dentists and I've never had a filling in my life. Never had a filling, never had anything wrong with my teeth. So unless I am provoked by my wife to go because it's been decades since I've seen a dentist, I just I just take my teeth for granted.
You think you've passed out from dental academy?
Well, I've never had any problems. I mean, my gums are
so what's your routine?
I've got Fisher sealant put on them when I was a kid, and they just basically put a completely protective coating over all my teeth, and they have never corroded.
So you just have a perma-smile?
I've had one kind of half knocked out, but apart from that, it's been
it's
all been pretty plain sailing. Yeah, we won't go there. It's been pretty plain sailing. So yeah, but I mean, we then actually can say we are not guilty parties in the latest environmental outrage that is being discussed. You, Natalie, and you, listeners and viewers, will be aware of Laura Young, I'm sure. Less Waste Laura, who is forever campaigning to make our world a nicer place and to cut down on pollution. Her latest campaign is against these little flossing harps. Are you familiar with them, Natalie, even if they're not part of your life?
You know what? I went and looked it up this morning. I'm familiar with the sort of run of string that comes out of a wee,
an old-fashioned. You wrap it around your fingers.
This is more like
yesterday.
It looks a bit like a hacksaw.
Yes.
If the serrated blade was replaced with
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is very much the modern version of what you used to do. Your fingers used to be good enough, not anymore. So yeah, that's what people use, and they're single use, and people seem to chuck them away. So anyway, she's on the warpath, Laura, about all of this. And well, she's done it before, right? She got single-use vapes banned.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the next big change that she's going to bring forward. I've been speaking to her, Laura Young. Less Waste Laura, welcome back to Scotcast.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Participant in one of our most popular ever episodes, litter picking. Who knew that would be a real phenomenal success
in our feed? If there's anything that brings people together, it's ranting about litter, but also thinking, what can we do about it? So I'm not surprised.
And it's become a competitive sport now, I understand.
I know. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, but also amazing. I don't know if I'll be taking part in it, but a good idea.
You'd be very good at it, I think.
Well, hopefully. Is that my athletic ability or my litter picking ability?
Well, your determination, I think, if nothing else, just built on a steely determination. But I mean, look, your determination, which has proven incredibly successful in the past, vapes, banned, almost at your instigation, the whole thing. Do you feel you're winning?
It's a really difficult question because you could argue that yes, we have been able to look back in Scottish history or UK history and say disposable vapes, we've had the ban this year, we've had action on plastic straws, the carrier bag charges, we've been addressing issues, and we can absolutely look back and say legislation is working. You can also then look at the data and say that organisations like Keep Scotland Beautiful, Marine Conservation Society do data cleanups and beach cleans, and they actually calculate it, and we're seeing a downward trend of the amount of stuff that we're finding. But you could also argue that litter hasn't disappeared. I've never run out of things to talk about or moan about. There's always something out there. And so I think, yes, we are winning in a sense, but I don't think we've got there with cracking the big nut that is plastic pollution at its biggest scale. We seem to have to do it quite piecemeal with item by item, which can be quite frustrating. And we also haven't quite cracked the nut of the cultural thing. We still see litter everywhere, and lots of people still think it's okay to litter. And that, of course, has impacts on the environment, wildlife, the way that we see our local areas. And ultimately, plastic is getting into us now as well, so it's a health issue.
So you don't think necessarily you are winning, seeing a discernible difference in the number of these monsters who think it's fine just to chuck a plastic bag out their car window?
I do think there is a lot of change happening, and I think it's becoming quite socially unacceptable. But I don't think the litter louts have left us, and I think there are still beauty spots in Scotland that continue to get trashed. You know, Loch Lomond in the Trossachs is one of the key examples where people don't know how to leave no trace. And fly tipping is the big example of that as well, where people are taking whole carfuls or vanfuls of stuff and just dumping it in a farmer's field. So we've definitely not got there.
Incredible levels of anger, lots of support for you when you talk about the big macro picture. I mean, everybody can get on board, I'm sure, with the notion that it is unacceptable to dump your takeaway beside your car door. You said you go through this item by item by item. If you'd asked me to bet on the next item that you would have in your crosshairs, Laura Young, the flossing harp would not
pretty
have
niche.
been... Yeah, it is pretty niche. The flossing harp would not have been in my top three. Firstly, what is it?
Well, people might know traditional dental floss. You pull off a bit, wrap it around your fingers and floss your teeth. But there are these dental flossers that are plastic devices. They look a bit like a harp at the top or like a slingshot, where there's a little bit of dental floss already put in place on a plastic stick, and you could do it, you know, one-handed floss in between your teeth and off you go. And these are a growing type of plastic toilet tray. We are seeing a lot of growth in the market of people buying them. They are quite convenient, and I want to address up front that there are people, for accessibility reasons, that find them a lot more useful. But we are also seeing these becoming a littered item. One, in urban areas, and that's because people are genuinely taking them out the door with them, flossing on their way to work, on their way out and about, and then tossing it. So the whole floss and toss is a bit of an issue. But we're also seeing them on the beach. And like plastic cotton buds, wet wipes, tampons, these are coming out onto beaches because people are flushing them down the toilet, and then they are ending up being pumped out when Scottish Water opens the floodgates of our sewer system, and then they end up on the beaches. So are they the number one item in terms of litter now? No, of course, we've still got cigarette butts, we've got plastic bottles and drinks cans, we've got crisp packets, we've got all those other things. But are they a growing issue? Absolutely. Are they a new item? Absolutely. And are they, I guess, a topic of conversation? They're kind of interesting. You know, it sparks imagination. And I think when we're trying to tackle plastic pollution, it's really difficult to talk about it generally. You know, we can talk about the 400 million tonnes of plastic that's, you know, produced annually, and the fact that less than 10% of it's recycled. But that doesn't really capture your imagination. But if you're talking about dental flossers on the pavement, that sparks a bit of interest. And that's why this is the next thing that we're trying to do to drum up interest to keep pushing for change.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. You wouldn't be in here if you weren't talking about flossing harps, if you were talking about the macro problem, but you've totally caught people's attention. So you do know what you're doing. Do you want us to stop flossing our teeth, for heaven's sake?
Absolutely not. And I think
responsible for an outbreak of halitosis nationwide.
No, of course not. And actually, you know, flossing is a really important thing. I think more people should do it, if anything. But we need to be looking at all of our habits and saying, how can we have the least impact on the environment? And also remember that a lot of the stuff that we are using, it's made of plastic. Plastic comes from fossil fuels. That's a finite resource. At the end of the day, we need to be conscious consumers. And what we're saying there's reusable dental floss harps out there that you put the floss on yourself and off you go. But I think we're trying to talk about the fact that we should be able to have good dental hygiene, good personal hygiene, you know, good ways of getting coffees and takeaways, whatever it might be, without creating a lot of waste, and of course addressing the litter.
So you're talking about, right, so don't floss and toss, don't chuck it in the gutter, obviously, don't stick it down the toilet and flush it away because it just comes back. What about putting it in the recycling? Well, I mean, you want these things banned. Is there not a way of using these things responsibly?
Well, of course there is. But similar to the disposable vapes campaign and things like plastic straws, you need to just ultimately understand that it is ridiculous that we have single-use pieces of plastic that are literally only used for a few minutes before being thrown away. And what this is also doing is saying, let's call for a ban, but let's also try and drum up a bit of excitement and raise awareness so that the companies that are making these can go, well, what could we be doing differently? These things are single use. Could they be made of cardboard instead of plastic? Do they really need to be that durable? Do
you not think, though, that here's a serious question, right? Do you not run the risk of people perhaps starting to roll their eyes and saying, well, whatever next? Because, and I tell you why I asked this, right? Because there's a growing political... So if people had thought that in the past, they might have thought, well, you can't really say that out loud. But in whispered conversations in the shadows, they might say, well, I'm getting a bit fed up of all this nonsense. And now there is a voice that represents them. There is Reform UK, Richard Tice, who's never tires of saying net stupid zero all these people now have got this touchstone. There's this kind of galvanising force around this naysaying argument. That's a problem for you, isn't it? Because suddenly these people have got somewhere to go.
Yeah, and, you know, if I had £1 for every time someone just went, take a day off, like, you know, just come on, you can't keep attacking every single item. But I think part of it is we need to find a way of coming together and agreeing on something. So what we can all agree on is that litter is bad. Nobody likes litter. You know, it's bad for wildlife. It doesn't look good in our streets. It contributes to that sort of broken window theory where places start to look run down. You start to see an increase in crime. And so part of it is about saying, you know, if I was sitting in a room with Richard Tice or anyone from Reform, I'd say, right, let's take a step back from dental flossers or disposable vapes or whatever it might be, and let's find the ground that we do agree on, which is we all want to live somewhere that's clean. We don't want somewhere that is running out of resources. We don't want to be, you know, pushing pointless overconsumption where people are wasting their money on single-use plastic. And ultimately, we need to address that. Now, I would love to just be able to crack the big nut of plastic pollution without attacking individual items. It's very labour intensive. You have to keep getting creative and finding new things. But this is the way to keep up the excitement. But tomorrow, the 5th of August, we are seeing the next round of negotiations globally for the Global Plastics Treaty. This time it's in Geneva in Switzerland, and we will, I can feel it, we will come to an agreement, and we will have the first global agreement on reducing plastic, trying to address plastic pollution, getting finance to countries for the waste management.
Didn't get an agreement last time.
It didn't, but it was supposed to. So the fact that we're now having this extra sort of 5th, 6th round of negotiations means that we are in touching distance, and I think we will get somewhere with it. And hopefully we can be able to do this from that big global perspective as well. But we do still need local solutions and to be addressing it with items like these.
And you've written to the First Minister about this. Well, have you got a response yet?
No. I think that would be a bit quick if we'd already had a response. Well, it's just come out. The excitement was drummed up over the weekend and the letter is out, and people, you know, already on social media are saying, absolutely, I see these everywhere. I didn't know what they were. You know, absolutely, this is the next item. But I think part of it is it's about keeping it in the conscious. You know, we've had great success with plastic straws, with carrier bags, with the polystyrene cups and things from takeaway, you know, containers. But we can't just let that sit. And also, it's important to say we've also had failed legislation. Deposit return scheme, you know, that didn't get anywhere. We're having to revisit that from a UK perspective. But I'm not happy with things just dying down and us just settling for, well, look, we've got a good little, you know, win with a few of these items. Like, isn't that enough? No, it's not enough. You know, we need to keep looking at what is polluting our environment, what is causing horrible things in our urban centres, and how can we be pushing for that change?
You can, I mean, you can write to the First Minister and get him on board, but John Swinney does a lot of things, but he doesn't manufacture dental floss harps. Have you written to the manufacturers and said, why don't you make these things out of bamboo or cardboard or whatever?
Yeah, well, with any campaign, there's different stages. And so this is the first stage to see what the political response is, to see what other people as well, citizen science, what are other people seeing on the ground. And of course, we do have the Global Plastics Treaty, so that's being addressed globally. And then the manufacturers are also in the middle. And there are, you know, lots of companies with the plastic cotton buds that did a big pivot. I think it was Johnson & Johnson who was the first big brand after seeing a lot of the campaigning to go, right, we're going to be the first ones to ban the plastic. So we hope that that'll happen too with the dental flossers.
When do you think these things are going to be banned? What's your target?
Oh, I mean, that.
Do you think you're going to win? Do you think you're going to get them banned?
Well, I think ultimately all products that are excessive single-use plastics are going to have to pivot away from that, whether that's because of individual case-by-case campaigns or whether that's by the Global Plastics Treaty that's happening in Geneva as of tomorrow. I don't know what way we will see that win, but ultimately all of these businesses will have to start pivoting. And we've seen that. You know, we've seen supermarkets, individual products have less plastic packaging. We've seen small changes even with things like, if you want a bottle of fizzy juice, the cap is now attached. You know, we are seeing changes because of campaigning and because of legislation. And
there is a momentum, isn't there? You talk about, there seemed to be very little publicity around the plastic bottle cap sticking on, and suddenly it's just there. There is and there's an acceptance as well that, oh, well, okay, can see a reason for that. I mean, you know, you got the wind in your sails.
Yeah, and part of it is, like, as campaigners, so I see my role drumming up a bit of noise, a bit of excitement, highlighting things, trying to keep it in the news agenda. And then it's almost like the sort of duck and then the feet underneath, or whatever that analogy is about paddling underneath. You've also got policy people then working in the background to say what's the best legislation, the best policy we can build. You've then got businesses trying to innovate. So I'm the one trying to drum up the excitement, keep it in the news agenda, address, funny maybe examples of where we're seeing this plastic pollution, but also recognise that years down the line, we then see the result of this campaigning.
Yeah. Laura, we always ask whatever next. Well, when we find out what's next from you, we'll have you back in. Thank you very much indeed for now. Laura Young, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it makes sense if you're a campaigner like Laura to focus on one tangible, achievable thing, right? And she's picked this one item that is a problem to try and deal with one thing at least. But obviously inside, beyond that, there's a whole big world of what are we doing about the climate? What are we doing about pollution? Plastic pollution is actually the subject of international talks, negotiated by the UN, and they start in Geneva tomorrow. So this is a global problem that at the moment there's no real agreement on what to do about it.
We're going to hear a lot more about those talks, actually. So, but if they do get an agreement, they didn't last time, if they do get an agreement this time, and they're pretty the mood music is they're on course to get the countries, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, who were reluctant last time to sign up, it will be a big deal. Unless you're cynical and say they'll sign up and then go away and break all their commitments. But I mean, who could be that cynical ever? History doesn't tell us that, does it? So we're gonna hear a great deal more about it. But she is smart, Laura. I mean, she knows that, if you talk about just broader plastic waste, people stop listening. If you go to war on flossing harps, people like us say, what are you on about? Let's get her in for a chat. So it works. It works.
I think to try and make big change, you have to start with small changes, don't you?
Exactly. But that's it for us for this episode of Scotcast. Remember, we're at the EICC this week, Wednesday the 6th, 10:30. You can still get tickets. The link will be in the show notes. But that's it from us for now. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.